Hi everyone, welcome to my week 13 project-based learning presentation. So this week we were asked to read chapters 3, 4, and 5 of Reinventing Project-Based Learning, Your Field Guide to Real-World Projects in the Digital Age, written by Susie Boss and Jane Krause. So in this presentation, I will basically just be highlighting the key points in the book that stood out the most to me. So Chapter 3 was called Imagining the Possibilities. Chapter 4, Strategies for Discovery. And Chapter 5, Making Assessment Meaningful. So in each chapter, I'm just going to highlight 2 to 3 points that stood out the most to me. So in Chapter 3, Susie Boss and Jane Krause really emphasized the big idea. So what is the big idea? You want to collect the most important parts of your curriculum. So you want to make sure you know all of your standards and every single part of the lesson that will be put into the project. I also saw that it's okay to not really know the questions that some kids ask, and it is your job as the teacher to research and answer those questions. So the next part is in creating the project is it important? You want to ask yourself, is the project and the results going to be important? Why is it going to be important? And to whom is it going to be important for? And the biggest point that I think needs to be incorporated in each project is, can it be connected to the student's real world life? Can they somehow bring this, for example, algebraic problem-based project into the real world? You know how kids are always asking, when are we ever going to use this in the real world? And you need to be able to connect it. So the next couple of points that really stood out to me was the fact that they said to really collaborate with your colleagues, meaning your fellow teachers and other content or standard creators. That's really important, especially when we get to the assessment side, so that all students have a sense of similarities in regards to how they are going to be graded, especially in like a rubric. The next part of this chapter that stood out to me was Bloom's taxonomy. So this is Bloom's taxonomy of basically critical thinking. So there is creating, evaluating, analyzing, applying, understanding, and remembering. So when you do a project-based learning assessment project, you need to be able to make sure that these students are creating and evaluating and analyzing and applying and understanding and remembering all of this stuff that you are asking them to incorporate in these projects. It's not just, let me put a few slides together, or let me create a project, like a, I don't know, volcano, for example. You want them to be able to get something at a higher level out of it. So the fourth chapter, Strategies for Discovery, the two main parts that really stood out to me was the fact that teachers have to overcome 6 major pitfalls. So the first one is being long on activity and short on learning outcomes. So this is in regards to taking a whole week to do one activity, but only getting one learning outcome out of it. Like, there's not an equal sense of learning there on time and outcomes. The next one is technology layered on traditional practice. So you want to make sure you are not just assigning um, them to type out a Google Doc on Google Docs instead of turning in a handwritten assignment. You want to make sure that they are using all of the technological platforms that they can to increase their efficiency and their learning. You also want to make sure that you're not overly scripting your project and the instructions for your project. You want to make sure that it has the minimal amount of steps and the easiest way to understand it. You also want to make sure that your class does not have a revolving theme. So sometimes teachers get in the habit of basing everything in their classroom off of one theme. I believe the book uses ocean as an example. So you don't want to just use like the types of animals in the ocean and then what do they eat, and then like you want to make sure that you are changing it up so that the students don't get bored and they want to be involved. The next one is the lack of formative assessments. So oftentimes the next chapter actually goes over assessments, but oftentimes teachers get too concerned with the end product that they don't really take the time to go through the formative, how the project is formed kind of assessment. And you also want to make sure that all of the projects that these students are turning in don't look alike, and that from year to year they also don't look alike. So you want to make sure that each project is unique and authentic. The next thing that really stood out to me was the most important features that make a project the best it can be. So I believe there were 14 points, but I just included 4 to keep it kind of simple. So the first one is that students learn by doing, and they also learn from each other. So you want to make sure that they have hands-on experience and that they're even working with a group to get this project done. The next important feature is that you need to capture the student's interest, especially by connecting it to the real world. So as I emphasized earlier, students really need to feel connected to the content that they're learning. They don't want to just be learning for a grade in school. They want to be learning to get something out of it once they graduate or move on to the next grade. Projects should also have different learning paths. This means that the directions for the project should be kind of broad so that each student can have their own way to interpret this project and create an outcome and project based on how they interpret the content. Also, projects should reach beyond school to involve others. So you don't necessarily want this to just be in class. You want them to go home and talk to their parents about it or their friends, You want it to be more than just school for the students. And the last chapter is making assessment meaningful. So it focused on 2 main assessments, and I think these are 2 main assessments that are found everywhere in school. So the first one is formative assessment. So this is assessing the student's progress throughout learning and completing the project. So this could look like chunking the project to have certain parts of it due by certain dates. This is also very easy for students to do because say they're writing a paper. The first week you want them to have their topic and their thesis statement done. The next week, a couple sources. The week after that, you want them to start incorporating the sources into their thesis. So as you build it up, it'll be so much easier for them to have a final project product. It can also include checkpoints or discussions or reflections so that if the students aren't understanding or having trouble with a certain part of the project, they can adjust the project if it's needed. Then next kind of assessment is the summative assessment. So this is assessing the students' learning after the completion of the project. So this is grading the students' learning based on the final product, the completion of whatever it is you're doing. So this is normally based off of a rubric. I'm sure mostly everyone has seen a rubric. It will have the scales from 1 to like 5 or 4, and it'll kind of include what the teacher is looking for. So when you have 5 teachers that all do projects, you want to make sure that you're doing all of these rubrics similar to your colleagues so that the students aren't having to relearn the rules of each teacher. So that's where teacher collaboration is really key. Summative assessments can also look like quizzes or tests as well. That is basically it. My only reference for this project was the book itself. I really enjoyed the reading, and I hope you liked it and you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you.